It's Friday afternoon. Jumping on here with a TREKLAND Live Now special just to talk about and get in some of my thoughts. It's been percolating in the last days about this bombshell news Thursday about Discovery and Paramount Plus and the streaming world at large and everything. So, and I didn't want to wait until TREKLAND Tuesdays live next week. I want to talk about Picard on Second Opinion Saturday. So this is right now, right here. And with a day of some of the things percolating up and seeing fandom reaction. So in general, in short, this is what I've been hearing rumblings about the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. It's really part of not just, get out of your Star Trek micro focus, even Paramount Plus. This is an industry situation. The era of throw all the money at streaming to get people over the hump, and the era of big TV may certainly be over. Not cinematic TV, but so many hundred of hours of content that nobody can keep up with it. So many hundreds of hours that people watch the Emmys and wonder what all these shows are they're seeing being awarded. The industry right now is retrenching. The streaming industry is. Some say this is Wall Street putting the screws on all the content makers, whether they're old school or new school, but to pull back on the number of shows and the money being spent and yada, yada, that the subscribers are going to hit a wall at some point. There's going to be a saturation point, and you're not introducing people to the technology anymore. You're over that hump. That ship has sailed from now the bulk of the country, and people are getting used to it. And for several months, you watch that and you would see the news about what's going on at Warner's and HBO Max and Netflix canceling shows, pulling the scope back. And I knew, and I've said this on TREKLAND Tuesdays Live, you've been with us, certainly with the Portales and our Portal 47 Ask Dr. Trek roundtables, but and publicly, if I've been in a con as we reopen, it was going to be one of two things for Star Trek. Either Star Trek was still seen to be indispensable to Paramount Plus's growth, and there were signs that it wasn't, or that Star Trek was no longer the golden calf for Paramount Plus. Either Star Trek would be immune to the industry trend, or it would be right there in the middle of it. Part of what's going on here, obviously, is Paramount Plus is not Trek dependent any longer. They've got Yellowstone in 1923. They've got Tulsa King. They've got, look what was promoted. Read the tea leaves. The tea leaves in this case are the Super Bowl commercial. Look what it was Stallone, and Tulsa King is the highlight. So is that good or bad? Is that going to take the pressure off Star Trek and be left alone? Or is that going to put the pressure on Star Trek? Hopefully not back to the Les Moonves putting the screws to Enterprise days, because we've got a different business model now. But they know what their internal numbers are. We're kind of guessing. We kind of have a feel for what's popular, what's not, and what they give us the signals. But right now, it's not such a matter of Star Trek going away. We're not looking at hanging by a thread like Enterprise and will it be here or not? And then will we have 15? We're not at a place where there's no Trek going away. What's interesting is how Paramount Plus reacts to the general retrenchment going on. And that's what Thursday's news was about. Discovery, we know, was wrapping up their 5th season, somewhere between principal and post, coming supposedly later this year in the flow. Currently we've got 5 Paramount Plus series of 10 episodes each. That's a nice fat 50 weeks a year, unless they start overlapping shows again. But that's only 2 weeks a year where you got holidays, if nothing else, that you take the time off. The question now is, on several fronts, what's going to happen to the bigger picture? Of course, the bombshell of this was landing on Fandom about Discovery itself. It was a surprise to the cast who had thought they'd wrapped. Apparently, they were expecting there to be a 6th season, maybe a shorter 6th season, but at least a 6th season of some kind. So apparently that's been the decision that's been nixed, and things are going to end with the 5th. And what we're hearing is that the finale threads are going to be retweaked and reshot, and some extra filming done, so that the 5th season doesn't end with a season finale. It ends with a series finale. And who knows what the future spinoffs and characters picked up for other series is. I'm looking at you, Tilly, and the cadets for Starfleet Academy. I don't know. But whatever it is, Discovery as we know it, which of course it shifts every season, Discovery as we know it is announced to end. And the minute this news hit, I knew we've been talking about this in the big picture with the industry. This is one, if not more, of Paramount Plus's reactions to that pressure and to the evolving state of streaming. But I also knew, good Lord, that Fandom was going to be agog. Are we going to see? We're going to see the haters crawl out from under their rocks and say, finally, it took 7 years. I'm sorry, a show that's been in production, yeah, with pandemic delaying things, but with a show that's been in production since 2015, 16, since 2016, that's nearly 7 years. Not a failure, gang. Not a failure. 5 seasons in streaming world when Netflix is cutting things off at 3, not a failure. Not a failure. Now, is Discovery going to be potentially my favorite of all the modern Trek series? Probably not. But do I respect it? Absolutely. Was it the pioneer? Yes. And you know who's the least respected of anyone? Not just a pioneer, but the pioneer who was the first of their kind. And not just that Discovery was, well, one of 2 early shows on CBS All Access. It was the first new Trek made for the streaming age, for the serialized age. It had to weather the slings and arrows from so many fronts. People who didn't like serialized Trek, people who didn't think it was being done well, people who didn't like paying for their Star Trek. Because Star Trek was free the way God intended, or it used to be. All of that, Discovery had to take head on, and all of its younger brothers and sisters will never have to put up with that again. It's taking the well-oiled machine that didn't exist and starting it up from scratch, just like the motion picture, just like the Next Generation. After those gap times. And this is the kind of things we talk about all the time on Trekland when they come up in context. They're touchstones. It's been a 55+ year franchise. We've been through all kinds of ups and downs and sidewayses and technical revolutions and cultural revolutions affecting Trek and Trek affecting the culture. A lot of this isn't rocket science, and it's not new. And yet we're here with the streaming industry. But one thing I was braced for was everyone to come out like they have no sense of time to say, oh yeah, finally. I told you. I mean, all the yahoos coming out to say, ha ha ha, Discovery is finally canceled. I've been saying this for 6 years. Well, yes. and I hear Alex Kurtzman was hired and refired 5 times yesterday. Yeah, those guys and gals and peeps. So I haven't done a total online survey, but I knew that just as much as the haters were going to crawl out and start bashing and beating their chests about they were right all along, which is so totally pointless here. At the same time, the aspect of Fandom that we've barely started to hear from, because they are out there, and maybe they don't know all the channels of which to speak now, but we will eventually hear them as the years go by. The Fandom, the fans who came to Star Trek through Discovery. I still have that Facebook group. Disco was my first Trek dance. There are going to be just as there were the belittled Kelvin films and all the fans who came to us through those. We did not know their number. We did not know their voice. It's still filtering in. But a year or 2 after the first movie, it started to strike, started to seep in how they were, just because they weren't speaking up right now because they knew all the places to go in and march in and report. If they were new fans, they were still figuring out the fandom as much as they were figuring out their Star Trek. And that's going to be the same thing with Discovery and Disco and everything. We're going to be hearing from the people eventually over time to whom Discovery changed their life. Not just brought them into Trek, but they'll have their tie-in stories. And of course you're going to respect that. It's amazing to me to look at all the people who now wax on and on about DS9 and Voyager. And at the time, are you kidding me? Fandom was splitting. Nobody was staying up till 1 or 2 on these dinky little channels. It was the viewer model of the time. It was the attitude post TNG. Nothing can ever top TNG. The fandom aging, people getting their kids. The kids that watch TNG in college are now off building their life. So many reasons. But look that's not the unending view of those series. Just as the pendulum has swung back and forth so many times on the original series already, and even Next Generation. So, nothing is set in stone. These things are going to happen, and I'm waiting as the years go by for the true impact of Discovery, and even beyond the mere representational aspect, which is going to be Discovery's hallmark, getting so many people unseen onto a seen screen. Even beyond that. And I got to say, I laugh about how Discovery, not laugh. We all know it had the troubled birth. We all know that was adding to it. We all know it had to shoulder the burdens of being the first streaming Trek and take all that on, which had nothing to do with Trek. It was just the paradigm shifting. We know all that, but I also know how it feels like it found its home. It had no business being 10 years before Kirk and Spock, but it found its home in the 32nd century. Each year has been an improvement, a jump up, grappling with how to handle the series. I'm really excited to see what the 5th season does. It's not the big bad threatening the universe. They are on a quest. And think of the quest episodes and sagas that Trek has done in the past. The fact that the crew and the cast, apparently, as they were filming and wrapping and writing first and then filming and wrapping, didn't realize this would be it. Even as they go back and tweak some of the finale, maybe the penultimate, to lead into a finale situation, which will be bittersweet times, I'm sure, but at least they'll have that ability. So, you've got the circle of the folks involved with the show, and it's Toronto. Strange New Worlds is in Toronto, too. You've got that happening. But as far as fandom goes, we're hearing from the haters. I know I'm curious to see how much of an outpouring of the disco fans, the disco folks, are going to step up and be speaking. Is it going to be 2017 again? God, I hope. Or 2016? God, I hope not. Because the bottom line is, no matter what you thought of Discovery then or now, or even as it evolved, it had its place in history. I think there was going to be some, I don't know that specifically disco is got to be pioneering for certain things, because there was always going to be a first Star Trek in this time period. It just happened to be Discovery. And now go off and praise and critique it beyond that. But something was always going to happen. That said, whatever it was going to open the doors, show the way, set the model, show what to do, what not to do for all the series that came after it, including the animateds. And for that, everybody will always be grateful to Discovery for that. Having said that, I think every season's improved, been an improvement. There have been some exciting things last year, some boldly goings. The whole, maybe not so much the adversary, but the whole making contact, the whole essence of Star Trek with non-humanoids, and how do we communicate, and some of the themes that Discovery was getting into the last year or so were amazing. And I will never forget the Admiral's line, "The past is the light by which we see the future," as a testament of people right now who want to forgive and forget and move on without looking at when something goes wrong, when people try to overthrow your country. And, oh, well, my bad, let's move on. No, you can't do that. I was that was one of the most powerful moments of any Trek at any time, speaking to its times. I crowed about it then, and I think it fell into the black hole and the blur of so much Trek. But, there are fond pieces of Discovery there, and things still to unravel. So that's there. I'm going to be curious to see what the relative noise level of people mourning the end of Discovery, people who are gloating, but the mourners, and I think Fandom has matured to the point where people realize that if it's not your cup of tea, now we've got the buffet, you can go like something else, and people, for the most part, still follow Discovery. People have their favorite parts of Discovery, characters, actors, moments. That's going to be part of it. I think we've had so many of these rough edges rounded down. It's a shock to come back after 12 years of the fallow years. Discovery took that on head on. No matter what it was going to be, somebody had to be first, and they were, and then yielded so much of what they do. I still think so much of how it impacted the audience is out there still. Now, just buckle up because you're going to have the haters out there, like time stood still for them from 2016 and 17. That's going to happen. I've been interested to see the fandom reactions to what's going on. And also, though, for Discovery fans not to take this personally, because Discovery was going to end. Would it have been a 6th season maybe if the pandemic hadn't happened and time schedules moved along a little quicker? Might there have been 6 seasons and then things wrap up? As I said, for a show on streaming to last beyond 3 years now is amazing. They're going to have 5 spread out over, as the actors and everyone else connected with the show is aging in real time, 5 years spread out over 7, right? It's a sign that Paramount Plus is not just sloughing it off as fast as they can. They bumped it into next year, so a delay, but they're going to make the most of these episodes. They've already announced this huge promotional campaign. They're going to salute their original king of Trek on the streaming paradigm. A lot better send-off than Voyager got when it helped launch UPN at the end. Voyager, which just don't let the screen door hit you on the butt on the way out. They're planning something much bigger for Discovery, so good there. But again, people can't help but take that personally. It was going to happen. It was a little abrupt, maybe a little more abrupt. Maybe a short 6th season might have been what might have been in the works, but it is what it is. Don't take it personally, Discovery fans or even Trek fans. Somebody had to be the first. Somebody had to be the first to go. You've had a long life. It's not personal. This is Paramount Plus's way of reacting to the budget, the economy, the financing, the evolving state of streaming, which leads us to the other big question, which everyone else, no matter what they're a fan of in Trek world, is saying, what does this mean for 5 series a year? Is that Picard is ending? There's this dance about maybe some characters coming out of Picard to be in a new series. Well, some would say get in line, because there's ostensibly still talked about, even recently, Starfleet Academy series and Section 31 series. And yeah, Michelle Yeoh's career is going insanely huge. What does that mean for Section 31? A lot of people never liked the idea of Section 31. It was dark. But what if Michelle Yeoh's Section 31 isn't dark, 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 the worst of DS9 darkness and Discovery's darkness? What if it's more of a Man from U.N.C.L.E. or a Mission Impossible? What if it's really a creative, imaginative Section 31 once it finds whatever time period it's going to be in? Don't be trapped. Just the same way they used to ridicule the Academy show as Starfleet 90210. That was a ridiculous, mocked idea, and part of the reason why it never took off from Harv Bennett's script idea for 6 on down. But they're out there. Get in line. Kate keeps talking about a Janeway spinoff. Get in line. It's amazing that things are listened to. Anson Mount's explosion of popularity, along with Ethan Peck as Spock, the whole demand for a Pike show, conveniently interspersed with Michelle Yeoh's career being, bumping Section 31 from the apparent development order, is a fact. And we've said for 2 years, good on CBS All Access, now Paramount Plus, good on them for recognizing that and, catching that wave and riding that bandwagon. And look at what we got. Look at what we got. Is that going to be replicated again? I don't know. The bigger picture, though, will we keep with this 5 series times 10 episodes, 50, a full year of Trek? Will somebody say, we can get by with 4 because we've got the Taylor Sheridan franchises, because we've got Tulsa King, we've got other things in the works that are finding their own audiences. Paramount Plus isn't Trek specific. It would seem that the pressure is on not to have 5, not to feel like it's Trek or die for Paramount Plus, that's their only growth path to more subscribers. Because now you're talking shareholders and the suits and the bean counters. And that's ultimately who decides Star Trek's fate, every iteration, every generation. Fans are in there, their numbers count, but who's making the decision? And it's above Alex Kurtzman's pay grade, much less all the individual showrunners. That said, there are options here. Do they cut back to only 4 times 10? Do they go 5, but just make them cheaper, less expensive? I mean, Discovery, legendary for throwing everything on the wall there, visual effects especially. But is there now, on top of that, you've got You've got the Herman Zimmerman, Richard James warehouse now. Toronto has been through all these years of Trek, and you're starting to have warehouse pieces that you can cobble, you can amortize, you can get more bang for the buck, as they used to say. Not quite up to the legendary status of all the warehouses Star Trek had around LA, but you're starting to pile some of that up. Can newer formats be designed to be cheaper? Would Starfleet Academy happen in classrooms, and then you use the AR wall, that three-dimensional modern day green screen that actors can see in real time? Do you put that to more effect without building so many huge, insane sets? Whatever, use more efficient use of location. Is there a way to cut the budget per episode down so that you can still have 5 series? Or does that go with 4? And that's, there's all those questions. And when we say 4, we're talking about the animated. Apparently Prodigy is more expensive than Lower Decks. Apparently all these other series, aside the other 3 series, have futures that we know about coming. So the idea of these other series that are announced and talking, but they're still in development. Nothing's been greenlit. Money put to it. Money and people put to it. I say that. There's development, which could be a small think tank, right? So we don't know what that's going to look like. And as much as people are, I hope not celebrating, I hope gloating, but as people are mourning the end of Discovery, a lot of people are mourning the potential end of wall-to-wall Star Trek all through the year. Will we keep the 5? Will we go back to 4? Will it be Strange New and the 2 animateds for a while? We talk about everybody wanting to spin something out. And here's the thing, too. You may see people play math. We're just living in different times. Just in the same way that the original series was struggling to get to 100 because the old rule of thumb was you needed 100 episodes to sell in syndication to local stations and keep, a network didn't care about that, but the studio that made it very much cared about that. NBC didn't care about the original series, but Paramount TV very much did after it inherited it from the Desilu purchase. And it was only 80 hours, not 100, but they found a way. It was so game-changing that, and Dick Block was a visionary, bought it early on and lit the fuse and showed what could happen, and blew up ratings for all the afternoons and early evening local stations with Star Trek back in the 70s and got this whole damn thing rolling. That's the kind of thing that is no longer a thing. Enterprise got to 100 episodes, but the whole streaming model, the whole syndication model was already changing. So, one generation's rule of thumb is pointless when you've got all the boxes sitting on your Netflix or your Paramount Plus queue sitting there. No one cares about how they can be shown in order, and so serialized is a thing. Those things change over time. So anyone who's doing the math and saying, well, there were 10 episodes a year times 5, 50. So Discovery has 50, and then what, 2 or 3 more extras, 55 episodes when it's all said and done. And they want to go compare and say, well, my God, Enterprise only had 100 and it was the failure show. Oh, the original series had 70, 80 episodes and it was the little failure that outlasted its. So Discovery only has 50, 55. Well, guys, it's a different time, a different place, a different paradigm. The business model is different. Every hour of Discovery was a mini movie. You didn't need 2 back-to-back episodes to equal a movie. You got cinema, you got big screen cinematic TV with every hour of Discovery. It was made to compete with Game of Thrones. But that's also the way by which maybe budgets can be cut and not suffer the storytelling, the scope for future series. But that's all to be seen. Right now, the thing is, celebrate Discovery, support the fans who are really, really going to miss this show, especially as they may not be sounding off in your circles. The Discovery's hardest core fans may not know all the little fandom places they're supposed to show up and talk about it. Its legacy is only going to grow over time, just as the legacy other Treks have. Support those fans. remember and recognize what Discovery accomplished, being first, the slings and arrows it took for what it was, the growing pains and the lessons learned from Discovery, and the rich history that it has added to, as much as chaos on the bridge, as much as the Paramount buyout of Desilu. It's just going to be part of the legendary Star Trek tapestry backstage that I love following, but also all the fans who lived week to week with that audience, their audience, living with those characters, and still have another year to go. Don't forget. We'll just be watching it knowing that those actors had no idea that this is the final end game. But you know what? That's Hollywood. That's Hollywood. So support them, be alert to watch not just Paramount Plus, but the streaming industry. The business side of things is affecting all of this. Watch what the trends are. Hey, even Mandalorian is coming in for criticism now about the set piece and the setup and the, it's like the new has worn off. This has become typical. It's become a business. It's become a business that some better than others is telling stories. And we'll see where we evolve from here. But pay attention to the business. Pay attention to what Paramount Plus is doing, and watch all the Trek you can watch. Support, would you critique when critiquing is needed, respectfully, civilly. That's how we get new and better Trek. And whatever the template goes from now on, whether we stick with 5 series or whether we retrench back to 4 and the new ones waiting in the wings that are talked about, that no one minds talking publicly. It's not the secret thing that you ruin it and you spoil it the minute you let it out there in case it doesn't go. We're way beyond that. So Academy, Section 31, all of that. Whatever happens with them is going to happen. And yeah. I'm just... We'll see. We'll see. Paramount Plus, I will say this about the future. Paramount Plus isn't sitting around twiddling their thumbs. This decision about Discovery was just made recently. We can tell by the surprise and the reaction of the cast, always taking the high road, of course. They're all thrilled to have been a part of it. They're all thrilled now to be part of the Trek family. And if you see them at cons and press events and the cruise, you know that. And you know how beloved they've all become. And you know how in the fine history of mostly Trek's creators and faces of Trek on both sides of the camera, but especially the acting cast, you know how they mostly uphold the same progressive, future-looking ideals as their fictional characters and the tones of the show, starting with Gene forward. You know that they're going to be supporting the family, but you know that the studio wasn't going to be caught left in the lurch. There are the plans for we're going to get told eventually. First Contact Day is right around the corner. I totally expect to hear some new dates and places. Maybe we'll hear about what the next new show is. We're already waiting on the Picard replacement. What will be the Discovery replacement? Will they both have a replacement? Will they both have a slot? What will happen slot-wise or character-wise? That's all to come. But just know that Paramount Plus, Alex Kurtzman's team, didn't just wake up Thursday morning or last week even and realize they had to put some future priorities in the works. So whether we find so many ways to do good Trek without throwing billions of dollars at it. That's going to happen. It's going to happen. But for right now, Disco folks, don't take it personally. You're going to hear some crap from the yahoos that have not got it for 5 years. But everybody's got some. If you're really sincerely a Trek fan, right now, there's no way you don't have something out there. Between Strange New Worlds and now Picard's final season, the way it's getting international global acclaim, and also the fact that, speaking globally, Paramount Plus is now getting some of their global goals. We're over the hiccups and the shoot yourself in the foot things of how they rolled out around the globe. We're finally getting past that, where that's not an issue. So even the pack where we've got multiple places, and don't forget Prodigy is on Nick as well as Paramount Plus. So we're going to move forward. This did feel like a bombshell. A lot of us have been seeing it happen. A lot of us have been hearing rumblings, but from the industry on down, it was inevitable that there would be some recalculations and maybe even some retrenchment. We're just going to see how much, how soon, and what physical way it actually fulfills for us. So that's me. I'm just jumping in here. We will still see you Tuesday. I'm about to start working on a second opinion for this weekend. Everybody keep loving what you're seeing on Picard, most folks. And that's going to do it for me right now. I just wanted to say that this has not been a total bombshell if you've been paying attention. Discovery people, you have a show to love that certainly was historic. You people that are bad-mouthing Discovery after all these years are just so clueless. And if you'd had your way, we wouldn't have had the spinoffs. We wouldn't have had anything else. Maybe the later show you love would never have happened if some moron had listened to you back in 2017, said, kill this and move on. Yeah, there would have been moving on, but it would have been moving on to non-Trek series. It's not the way the capitalist media system works, and that's what we're dealing with. So just some thoughts out there and some looks ahead. So I invite you to join me on Tuesdays Live or catch it later. I invite you to join me for Second Opinions. I've got some Cadet Alice watches Prodigy to post. I invite you to get on my mail list at LarryNemecek.com. Invite you to dive behind the scenes with us in my company, Portal 47. And if you're ever in LA or make a special trip, I'd love for you to come and tour location sites with TREKLAND Treks. That's what we're up to, aside from occasional special projects and where we're popping up. Looking forward to another great year as we reopen, quote unquote. And we will see you around TREKLAND, everybody. Trek well.